It's over. And I know that's not an easy thing to say out loud as a 49ers fan. Watching this season come to an end the way it did hurts, especially against a division rival and especially with the score getting out of hand so quickly. A 41-6 loss is not how anyone imagined this chapter closing. And if you're feeling frustrated, disappointed, or even just numb right now, you're not alone. I felt it too. But before we let this one game completely define how we remember this year, we've got to slow things down for a second and look at the bigger picture. Because here's the truth. Not that long ago, a lot of people weren't even sure this team would still be standing at this point. Injuries piled up, expectations shifted, and there were moments during the season where the path forward wasn't exactly clear. And yet, here we are, talking about a playoff run and a team that found a way to keep fighting week after week. That doesn't erase what happened in Seattle, but it does matter when we start evaluating what this season actually was. This loss was brutal, no way around it. From the opening kickoff, it felt like everything tilted the wrong direction. And once that happened, it was hard to recover. But endings like this have a way of exposing things that wins sometimes hide. Red flags show up clearer. Weak points get highlighted. And as painful as that is in the moment, it can be valuable if the team is willing to learn from it. Now, with the season officially over, we're fully into off-season mode. And honestly, that's where some of the most important work happens. This is the time where tough conversations get had, where roster decisions start to take shape, and where the foundation for next year is quietly built. That's also why you're going to want to stay locked in here. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on, because this off-season is going to be busy, and we're going to break it all down together as it happens. Let me ask you this, and be honest with yourself. When you step back from the emotion of this loss, did this season exceed your expectations? Overall, yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments, because I really want to see where everyone's head is at right now. As tough as this ending was, it didn't come out of nowhere. There were warning signs along the way, and this game brought them all to the surface at once. And if we're going to talk honestly about where the 49ers go from here, we have to start by breaking down exactly what went wrong on that field against Seattle. That game against Seattle was a reality check in every sense of the word. From the very first moment, it felt like the 49ers were chasing the game instead of controlling it. Giving up a touchdown on the opening kickoff completely flipped the script. And before the offense even had a chance to settle in, the tone was already set. You could feel it through the screen. This wasn't going to be one of those slow, grinded-out playoff games. Seattle came out faster, more physical, and more prepared. And the 49ers never found a way to respond. What makes this loss even harder to swallow is that it wasn't some fluky performance. This is now the second time in 3 games that the Seahawks completely shut down what is usually a high-powered offense. And somehow, this one felt worse. Even though the 49ers technically scored more points than they did in the Week 18 matchup, the gap between these two teams felt wider, not closer. Seattle dictated everything. Field position, tempo, momentum, all of it belonged to them. And when you step back and really think about it, the most alarming part is how little Seattle actually had to do offensively to put this game away. They didn't need to be creative. They didn't need to take risks. They let the 49ers make mistakes, capitalized immediately, and built a lead that made the rest of the night feel like an uphill climb with no traction. That's not just losing a game. That's getting outmatched. I keep going back to this idea of ceiling. For weeks, the question around this team was, how high could they actually go, given everything they were dealing with? Missing key players, shuffling lineups, relying on depth in critical moments. And while the season as a whole answered some of those questions in a positive way, this game exposed the limit. Against this matchup, against this defensive front, the 49ers just didn't have answers. Now, I'm curious what you felt watching this unfold. At what point did you realize this game was slipping away? Was it the opening kickoff, the early defensive breakdowns, or the first few stalled offensive drives? Let me know in the comments, because everyone's breaking point felt a little different during this one. If you appreciate these honest, no excuses breakdowns, make sure you like the video. It helps the channel a ton and lets me know you want more of this kind of real talk during the off-season. Because as bad as this loss was, it didn't just expose a bad night. It exposed deeper issues that the 49ers can't ignore. And if we're being real, the most obvious problems showed up on the offensive side of the ball, starting right up front. If there was one thing that stood out above everything else in this game, it was how hard it was for the 49ers offense to function at all. And it starts with Brock Purdy. On paper, his stat line doesn't look good, and there's no reason to sugarcoat that. He made mistakes. The interception hurt. The fumble on the sack was costly. He's accountable for those plays. But if you actually watch the game, you know the full story goes way beyond just the quarterback. Purdy was under siege from the moment he dropped back. It felt like every snap turned into a survival drill. The broadcast even mentioned how many yards he ran just trying to escape pressure, and that tells you everything you need to know about how broken the protection was. It's almost impossible to play quarterback at a high level when you're constantly fighting for your life before roots can even develop. And that brings us straight to the first major red flag that this game put on full display: the offensive line. This unit got overwhelmed, plain and simple. Yes, Seattle has one of the best front sevens in football, and that matters. But that can't be the excuse for getting dominated the way they did. The pocket collapsed over and over again. Run lanes never had time to form. Timing was off across the entire offense. And when that happens, everything else falls apart. Trent Williams has been a cornerstone of this line for a long time, but he's getting older, and even he has acknowledged that the end of his career is closer than the beginning. That doesn't mean he's done, but it does mean the 49ers have to start planning more aggressively for the future up front. The run game wasn't much better, and that's saying something for a team that prides itself on physicality. Christian McCaffrey was held in check almost the entire night. He finished with limited production, dealt with an injury during the game, and never really had a chance to get into a rhythm. When you look at the rushing numbers, they're misleading. A lot of the most effective yardage came from Purdy scrambling, not from designed runs doing what they're supposed to do. That's not sustainable, especially in a playoff environment. So let me throw this question your way. What do you think was the biggest offensive issue in this game? Was it the offensive line, the play calling, or overall execution? Drop your answer in the comments, because there's no single right answer, and I want to see where you stand. And this is exactly why the off-season matters so much. Conversations about upgrading the offensive line aren't optional anymore. They're necessary. If you want more in-depth roster breakdowns and off-season discussions like this, make sure you're subscribed. We're on the push to reach 1,000 subscribers, and every single one counts. Because, as bad as the offensive line and run game looked, there was another issue that might be even more concerning long-term. And it showed up loud and clear in the receiving game. The receiving game in this one was hard to watch, and there's really no other way to put it. When you step back and look at the stat sheet, it almost doesn't feel real. 0 catches from the player who's supposed to be your top option in the biggest game of the year. That can't happen. not in a playoff game, and not for a team with championship aspirations. And that's why this loss shines a massive spotlight on the second major red flag the 49ers have to address: the lack of a true wide receiver one. Now, to be clear, this isn't about piling on one player. The entire passing offense struggled, and we already talked about the protection issues and the pressure Brock Purdy was under all night. But even with those factors, you still expect your best receivers to find a way to impact the game somehow. One catch, a key third down, a moment that shifts momentum. And that just never happened. When you look at the rest of the receiving production, it doesn't get any easier to digest. Demarcus Robinson with 1 catch, Jauan Jennings with 2, Kyle Juszczyk with 1, Jake Tonges leading the team in receiving. That's not a formula that works in January, especially against a defense as disciplined and physical as Seattle's. You can't win meaningful games when your passing attack looks that limited. This also brings up the uncomfortable reality of where this roster stands at wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk was supposed to be the guy. He was paid like a wide receiver one, and the expectation was that he would anchor this offense in moments like this. With that no longer being the case, the idea of replacing production by committee just doesn't feel realistic anymore. What we saw in this game makes it clear that the 49ers might need to go get a legitimate star at the position, not just depth, not just complementary pieces, but a true difference maker. That doesn't mean the current group has no value. Jauan Jennings is going to be in demand this offseason, whether it's with the 49ers or somewhere else. Ricky Pearsall has talent, but availability matters, especially in the biggest moments. Still, talent alone isn't enough if defenses don't fear your passing game. And right now, that fear factor just isn't there. So I want to hear from you. Do you think the 49ers need to go out and get a true wide receiver one this offseason, or do you believe this can still work by committee? Let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this honest breakdown, go ahead and like the video. It helps push this content to more 49ers fans who are trying to make sense of what just happened. Because once you strip away the frustration of this one night, there's a bigger question still waiting to be answered. Was this season a failure, or was it something to build on moving forward? That's where this conversation has to end. When the emotions settle and you zoom out, this season deserves more credit than it's getting right now. Yes, the ending was ugly. There's no defending a loss like that, and it's going to linger for a while. But one game, even one this bad, shouldn't erase everything this team accomplished over the course of the year. Context matters, especially in a season that asked the 49ers to adapt over and over again. This team dealt with injuries that would have sunk most rosters. Key players missed time, roles changed, and expectations had to be adjusted on the fly. And still, they found a way to win 12 regular season games. They found a way into the postseason. And not only that, they went on the road and knocked off the defending champions in their own building. That's not nothing. That's a real achievement. And it shouldn't be brushed aside just because the final chapter was painful. There were ups and downs, no doubt, about it. There were weeks where this team looked unstoppable and others where things felt shaky. But through all of it, the one constant was that they kept competing. There wasn't a single game where it felt like the 49ers had no chance walking in. Even in Seattle, as rough as it turned out, it didn't feel impossible beforehand. Sometimes, it just isn't your night. And sometimes, it just isn't your year. And that's why I still come away from this season feeling more optimistic than discouraged. The glass is more than half full for me. This team was fun to watch. It was resilient. And now, with the offseason officially here, they have the opportunity to recover, refuel, and retool with a clear understanding of what needs to improve. Offensive line help. a legitimate wide receiver threat, depth in key spots. These aren't guesses anymore. They're clear objectives. So let me ask you this as we close things out. When you look back on this season as a whole, do you view it as a success? Yes,